Time to add another SOG or SOG, as I call it, knife to my playlist. These two have been previously reviewed in the Nutnfancy project by myself. This is the wonderful SOG Tech Bowie knife. Look at that, black titanium nitride coating. I talked about that in the video. What a good looking and useful, purposeful blade. Both kind of cools here. Cool to collect, that's the second kind of cool. First one is practical utility, very capable knife. I've had this one reprofiled to make it sharper and even more capable. Here's that SOG gov-tac, also previously reviewed in TMP. Great knife, love it. It is the successor to the SOG government agent, which was sadly discontinued. But I'll tell you what, the gov-tac carries on a pretty good tradition of its own now. And now it's time to talk about the SOG Daggert series of knives. Please refer to that video I posted, the, what would I call it, the Dagger versus Bowie dilemma. I'll annotate that if I remember it. And in there I talk about just a few considerations you might want to think about when you're choosing a blade based on the first type of cool. In other words, just practicality that you want to consider. In other words, if you're a soldier deploying, is a dagger your first choice to go overseas with? Like I said in that video, probably not. It does lack some utility capabilities that a good old Bowie knife or clip edge knife, single edge variety, I mean, offers, just like this one, the SOG Tech Bowie. However, and for me, and I forgot to tell you this in the video, daggers for me pretty much satisfy the second kind of cool. I just like them. I think they're interesting, they're cool, they're a good collectible knife. I probably won't use them very much in a tactical role, truth be told. Pretty much anytime I'm going out with my LBE gear on, I'm going to opt for the utility and still fighting capability of a good old Bowie knife, probably along the lines of the SOG Tech Bowie, just like that. However, that's not to say I still don't have a thing for daggers. I do. They're just cool. And this SOG Daggert is a great example of a quality-made factory offering. And there's not a lot of factories, last time I checked, putting out quality daggers. There's a couple. I mean, previously reviewed in the Nutnfancy project, you have that Boker Desert Dagger. Cool blade. Good looking blade too. Isn't that hot? Love that knife. Applegate Fairbairn style dagger. Really good looking blade. Yeah, I had that reprofiled. You can watch the video on this if you get bored. Good looking blade. That's a quality factory produced dagger. And I think a somewhat limited coloration. It comes out in other colors too. Black being one of them, of course. Great blade. And then, of course, a Daggert too. This one comes in two different sizes currently. And again, things can change. Colorations can change. Blade materials. Every time I do a video, dudes, it's basically a snapshot in time. I don't care what I'm reviewing. You know, we could turn around next month and this knife could be discontinued. I highly doubt it, but it could happen. So if you find something that I review and you like it, you might want to move on it because you just never know when it's going to go away forever. The Daggert 2 is a larger version and it has a bigger blade. It's like a 6.5 inch blade. Let me make sure I'm not lying. Yep. And then the smaller one, the Daggert 1, has a 5.7 inch blade. And so it's just a little bit smaller. It just depends on what you want. Now, if we're talking about the first type of cool, and that is practicality, usefulness, utility in the blade, then the size might be a player. Heck, for second kind of cool too. For just collectability, you might like the smaller daggers, you know, kind of along the lines of a backup blade. I understand that. For me, if I were to ever employ this, I kind of like the bigger blade. At least as of now. I'd really like to have both, but if I had to choose between one or the other, Daggert 2 is where I'm going to go with it. And the smaller one, though, I think a lot of guys would like that one too. The interesting part is between the Daggert 1 and the Daggert 2, there isn't a lot of size difference. They're very similar in weight, and they're very similar in size. You're just talking about, what, the differences in blade, under an inch of blade difference. So really not that big of a deal. Well, talking about the blade, one thing that's going to be hard to do on a dagger, like I mentioned in my Dagger versus Bowie dilemma video, is trying to get a razor sharp edge on a thin profile dagger blade. I would call the Daggert 2, the Daggert 1, a thin profile dagger blade. That's because it's relatively thick. You can see the stock right there of how thick that blade is. And we're doing a mid-spine grind. And what we're asking the blade to do is terminate into a razor sharp edge in a very short run of distance right here. It's a hard task to do because the angle is just too abrupt. A shallow angle makes a very sharp blade, and it's hard to do. As such, the Daggert 2, as it came to me out of the box, not so sharp. Wasn't too impressed with it. And in fact, even though I've worked on it a little bit, it still needs some work. And that's just more of a function, I think, of the grind, that steep mid-spine grind out of thick stock than anything else. It is hollow ground, just like most daggers are, that guys that know what they're doing. And that does the best it can, trying to give you that relief edge, getting you some sharpness out of the blade. But I'll tell you, it needs some work. The tip, like all daggers, will be delicate and can break off because it's double ground. In other words, it's coming to that sharp tip, which is designed for thrust cutting, stabbing. That's what a dagger does. And so you can't ask it to do much more than that, really. So be careful when you're using this. If it goes into a hard material, you'll probably lose your tip on this. Not too much belly in the Daggert versus, let me see if I still have it on the table. I showed you that cold steel taipan. Here it is. So many knives. Dude, I gotta show you this. I'm gonna unclip. This is hilarious. This is the bundle of knives I have going here. You'll get a kick out of this, I think. And this is just crazy. This is what I'm sorting through. That's right. So these are just, I don't normally keep them like that, but as I review, then I want to have them handy. And if I don't have them handy, then I have to go hunting for them, and it doesn't make for an expeditious video. There's that taipan. That is a wicked blade right there. Talked about a lot about it, probably too much, but you can see it has a lot more belly just due to its wider plan form than the Daggert blade does. So it's going to offer a little bit more, maybe if it has any. You know, I'm real careful to say that a dagger is a utility blade, but it's going to have a little bit more than the Daggert because it's wider. And I do prefer the broader style daggers. I just do. Whether I'm talking first or second kind of cool, it doesn't matter. Like them. But I still am attracted to the Daggert as far as a collectability standpoint. I think it's a cool knife. But it doesn't have a lot of belly in it. It's pretty much reminiscent of that Gerber Mark II blade, isn't it? You know, the original dagger from the Vietnam era. Very similar blade shape. Doesn't have that tapered waist of the original Mark II. Still very similar blade shape overall. Has a little bit of a groove running down mid-spine here. And that serves no other purpose than aesthetics, if you were to ask me. No, it doesn't lessen blood suction or anything if it's used in a stabbing function. That's total nonsense. Someone commented on that on one of my videos. They're like, I think that's to lessen the suction, so when you stab with it. Nope, that doesn't do that. It's aesthetic. You can make a case maybe it makes it a little bit stiffer, but being that thick as it is, that really is a pretty thick piece of stock. There's some serrations on the top. I guess you could use them for cutting rope or something. You know what I say? I say if your knife's adequately sharp, you do not need serrations. Moreover, you don't have to worry about ever sharpening serrations if you don't have them. Once they're dull forever. Now on the flip side, other guys will say, I like the serrations because at least one portion of my blade will always be sharp and ready to rock and roll. And that's why they like them. On a dagger of this sort, I don't really see the purpose for them too much. And I'm talking about in practical terms. If your blade is sharp as you should maintain it, it should serve just fine. But they're there. Yes, you could use them for cutting rope or some other fibrous material, and they will remain sharp. They're a little bit abrupt, if you ask me. I like shallower serrations. Always have said that in my review videos. Now, the rest of the review is going to be very similar to the others. In other words, the gov-tac, and reference that review because, I'll go ahead and go over it, but it's going to be the same exact handle. The gov-tac and the Daggert are identical from the crossguard back. Actually, the crossguard included. It's that shaped stainless steel crossguard. By the way, both blades made out of AUS 8 steel. That's a good all-purpose medium quality stainless steel. I've talked to that. It will rust on you if you don't take care of it. Holds an edge well. I like it. It is a big improvement over what SOG used to use in their AUS 6 steel, which I was not a fan of. Albeit they had a really nice heat treatment on it. I much prefer a US 8 steel if given a choice. But there's your handles. It's got those good looking gray spacers with a Kraton grip. That's a very hand-filling grip, both of them. An improvement over the old SOG Government Agent, which was a little bit on the narrow side. I still like it. Still on a little bit of narrow side. You don't get something for nothing, though. As soon as you get a bigger grip like this and a formed stainless steel crossguard, you're going to add just a little bit of weight. Both of these knives, without the sheath, if I'm not mistaken, are around 10 ounces. Yeah, 9.2 for that Daggert 2 is what it's weighing right here. And about the same for the gov-tac. I think gov-tac is about 10 ounces. And that's a function of that shaped and formed crossguard. That's a chunk of metal. Also the handles, it's a full tang design. You know, it just adds a little bit of extra weight. That being said, though, the loadout weight on this Daggert is quite reasonable. I mean, with sheath included, reset this, it's going to be a very reasonable 13.2 ounces. Decent. I like that. So you can have heavier daggers out there for sure. Handle, you can hammer with it, just like I said in that gov-tac video. And actually, the Tech Bowie is the same way, although it has a different fastener system on it. And again, like I said in my vid of this is not a knife I'm going to go out and thrash. The SOG Tech Bowie. I'm just going to probably take care of this one. This is a nice knife. If I ever have to employ it as an LBE deployment soldier knife, I'm sure it would do quite well. I got a lot of other blades that can function in that capacity, so no hurry on that. Got the SOG emblem in that Kraton handle, and I told you, like I said in the gov-tac vid, I like that Kraton. Very grippy, nice handle, comfortable. They could probably radius those edges. Now that I've worked with these knives a little bit more, they could radius them just a little bit more, but that's a very, very minor quibble. Overall, decent. Solidly made knives, both of these, and the Daggert's no different. Nice long dagger blade. Here's a sheath on it, and it's identical to the gov-tac sheath, except with one exception. You can see how it's shaped in the dagger fashion on the right-hand side. The gov-tac sheath is, of course, on the left. Both wearing that SOG emblem, and I don't mind that. I think it's cool. You know, if you have a quality product, you know, go ahead and promote your brand. I have nothing, as long as it's not obnoxious. And I know SOG does that in a lot of different ways. They have their emblem knives and stuff. I really don't mind it. This one's pretty low-key, so it's not obnoxious. Now, if they printed it in really large letters across here, I'd probably have issues with it. I mean, do it subtly, and I'll buy off on it. No problem. This is an improvement, by the way, on the sheath over the Government Agent. This is a Hypalon retention strap that's much less prone to getting cut as the blade goes in and out of the sheath. Which, by the way, when you do that, expect to get a few Kydex shavings as you just, you know, use a sheath. That's pretty normal with all these SOG knives. It just happens that way. Nice lock-in on that. Like that, just like the gov-tac. Hypalon retention strap fastens well. No rattle at all, just like that gov-tac that I mentioned earlier. And the same exact attachment system. That American Sportsman's Products quick detachable system. It's kind of serves the same purpose as the Tech Lock by Blade Tech, and I haven't used it really hard yet, so I don't know if it'll withstand heavy use. I suspect that it will. If you soldiers have found that it does not, post it in the comments. We'll update the video, just like I will all my products. Here's that standoff capability. Remember I said from your platform, it kind of blocks out and pushes the knife away, so it's not really close to your LBE gear or your belt, depending on how you're carrying this. But overall, it's going to carry really nice. Could you carry upside down with this? The Daggert? You bet you could. A couple things to consider, though, is one, you'd want to lock it in, of course, solidly. You could use 550 core through your rivets right here. That'd be one way. You could use Ranger rubber bands and really attach it firmly on the molly gear. It's a pretty easy proposition to do that. Always keep your cross strap or your retention strap buckled up if you decide to go inverted. But I think that it's probably a little bit on the long side to carry inverted. I don't like a knife this long when I'm carrying inverted. Usually I'll like it along the order of maybe a Benchmade Nimmervis. That's a little bit more doable as far as an upside down deployment blade. But your mileage may vary. Just depends. So that's it. Everything else is pretty much identical to the gov-tac, and in some ways the Tech Bowie. The handle is excellent. It's got the AUS 8 steel. It is a thin profile dagger blade. Along with that comes all those limited purposes we discussed in the previous video. I mentioned the dagger versus Bowie dilemma. However, for the second kind of cool, just collectability and in its own POU, and that is the thrust attack, this Daggert 2 and its little brother, the Daggert 1, I think would function quite admirably, being very strong and durable daggers of the type. This is Nutnfancy. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for the rating. Sure appreciate it. More coming.